Every season of Survivor is a story. There are main characters, sidekicks, comic reliefs, and villains. Therefore, a good season of Survivor tells a good story. It will grip you and have you rooting for someone and against someone else. You will want to tune in episode after episode to see what happens next until it all finishes with a, hopefully, satisfying conclusion. Each story we look at together will go through one character's journey from beginning to end, from the time they are introduced until they inevitably get their torch snuffed or win the game. We will look at every character moment and strategic move to determine whether they were a hero or a villain and whether they were a good or bad strategist. And with that, welcome to Once Upon an Island. Welcome to Snakes and Rats, the story of Richard Hatch, the winner of Survivor Borneo. As a preface, this video will only be observing what the TV show shows us and what stories being told through the show. No future seasons will be mentioned, as the story and characters here have no idea and therefore are unaffected by those future seasons. All character moments and strategic moves are interpreted with the mindset of what the story is trying to tell us. I will not be interpreting it with a modern Survivor mindset. Therefore, someone flip-flopping in the Australian outback may be smart, but it would portray them as a villain. Whereas if someone is doing this in a modern day season, they would be considered smart and no one would think lesser of them as a person. With that out of the way, let's open the book on Richard Hatch of Survivor Borneo. Richard Hatch, a 38-year-old corporate trainer hailing from Rhode Island, was the winner of Survivor's first season, Survivor Borneo. When he claimed his victory on national television in August of 2000, he was viewed by audiences as a deceitful villain who stole the victory by playing a mean and unfair game. But there is a lot more to the inaugural winner of Survivor than that basic take. From the first time we hear Richard speak on the island, we know that he is already thinking 5 moves ahead of everyone else. As his tribe, Tagi, arrives on shore, Richard immediately perches himself up on a tree branch and visually shows us that he is the king of this island, despite what Jervis says after that first immunity challenge. The thought process he has in his interactions with Suhawk tells us that he is already thinking strategically right out of the gate when no one else seemingly is. It seems as if everyone else is too busy focused on the physical survival aspect without thinking about the slogan of the show, which is outwit, outplay, outlast. This is what I would call smart strategic play. Richard's very first confessional tells us everything we need to know about the future winner. He is smart, arrogant, and has his victory visualized from the beginning. He recognizes his weakness and knows he needs to keep it in check for 39 days. But hiding your true self for that long can be hard, really hard. I mean, we're talking over a month. However, this lack of humility about having this game already won certainly comes across as something prideful and a bit villainous.
It's that kind of cocky attitude that makes people really hate your guts. So that's the kind of thing I've really got to keep under wraps.
Later on in the premiere episode, Richard's tribe mates are working around camp and he spots Dr. Sean attempting to cut some bamboo with a hatchet. Richard insists that his machete is sharper and better for the job. Dr. Sean takes that machete and with one swing...
Sharper though. Just wondering because that's so damn hard. Oh, that's
Yeah, Richard's arrogance is being reinforced here. Immediately following that scene, we have Richard and Sonia spending a human moment together. Sonia is playing a humorous song on her ukulele, and Richard is loving this. His compassionate human side of him shines through here and shows us that maybe there's more to this man than his arrogance. Maybe something a bit heroic. Later on, Rudy's talking to us and tells us how Richard has actually surprised him. You see, Rudy is a tough, old-school Navy SEAL who doesn't tolerate any BS. But Richard, he likes that guy. As Rudy so eloquently puts it,
you know, he's fat, but he's good.
I like Rudy. I'm not bothered by his straightforwardness at all. I don't think it's even a problem.
Richard's tribe has lost their first immunity challenge. That sucks, but it does give us an opportunity to see how Richard thinks strategically now that he's talked himself up so much. Now, this is mostly due to the fault of Sonia tripping and falling during that immunity challenge, but Richard has a personal connection with Sonia, so he doesn't actually vote for her. Instead, he votes for Stacy. Why?
Tough call. Subtle reasons. Not sure exactly what they are.
For someone who seems to be thinking 5 moves ahead and is talking all the strategy and how he's going to win, He doesn't show any of that here when it actually counts and votes incorrectly. As the first episode comes to a close, we have seen that Richard Hatch is a pretty flawed human being who is arrogant, but he shows he has heart. He shows he has a heart for people. He is strategically ahead of the game, according to what he says at least, and will not survive if he cannot turn the tide of others' thoughts about how to play the game as well. So far, it seems like he's the only one thinking about this game as a game. He has been featured pretty well in this episode and seems to be the narrator so far, and is probably going to be a major character all season. Episode 2 begins, and we learn something a bit unexpected. Richard Hatch is gay. Now, unlike today, this was not nearly as common in 2000. Gay pride was not mainstream, and the term gay was used as a slur or as an insult. Thankfully for Richard, it seems as if everyone on his tribe has no qualms with this, aside from possibly one person. He's worried about one person having issues with this, and that's Rudy, the old school Navy SEAL who believes in not having children out of wedlock and marriage being between just a man and a woman. Now, considering how close Richard and Rudy are, this concerns Richard Hatch a little bit. Rudy doesn't even want to talk about it.
When he came up here, he said, you want to talk? I said, no, I don't want to talk. And he was going to tell me he was queer then.
But it doesn't really matter. Despite Rudy not wanting to have that conversation, all is well. Rudy has already gotten to know Richard and has softened up to him, viewing him as a great leader that people could learn from despite being homosexual. Their friendship remains, and it softens up the audience to both of these characters.
Me and Richard got to be pretty good friends. Not in a homosexual way, that's for sure.
The third episode follows this up pretty quickly, with Richard and Dirk butting heads over Rich being openly homosexual.
He's extraordinarily religious, and I don't know that we'd ever be, real close as a result of that, because we're on such different ends of the spectrum religiously.
Later on in that third episode, Richard ends up being Aquaman's arch nemesis because he catches fish like a true master. He brings back 3 stingrays to the camp, and his expertise as a fisherman is well loved by his tribe mates, and why wouldn't it be? Before Tribal Council, at the end of the third episode, we get a confessional from Rich where he tells us how he tried to start an alliance or a voting bloc, or basically a few people just agreeing to vote for the same person. But apparently this was met with backlash, as no one seems interested yet in doing this. Him bringing this up and getting into people's head though, it's a good idea. He's not pushing the issue, so it actually seems like a very smart move.
I even wanted to talk with the group about who we were voting for, and let's, before we even go, know, so we could talk with the people, but boy, did that not fly.
With episode 4, we actually see the harvest from this alliance seed pop up pretty quickly. After voting 2 people out of the tribe, it may be time where people are actually starting to think, I want to survive and make it to the end of the game. So Sue and Kelly agree to vote together, as this would have a very obvious benefit.
The alliances have begun, and I didn't even have to do much about it.
Getting Richard in the same boat and us 3 having the same vote.
Episode 5 has a character scene with excellent insight into who Richard is. He finds a deadly snake in a tree by the beach and decides to toy with him and get him into the ocean. Why? Why would he spend his time doing this and risk his life? Because Richard is the alpha snake.
I want to put him in the water because I want to watch him swim.
At Tribal Council, Richard truly benefits from Jeff's nicer side, as Jeff's been actually really nice these first 5 episodes. Whenever Jeff asks him a question, Richard will just deflect or play dumb, and here he does some expert deflection by taking Jeff's question about alliances forming and voting and reinterprets it so he can answer it in a way that doesn't actually answer the question but gets Jeff off his back. It's absolutely brilliant, and he gets away with it. Okay, so we have reached the point in the rising action of Richard's story that I think most people remember Rich for. Sure, people know him as the guy who won Survivor, but Rich goes nude. Why? Because he wants to. Is it awkward? Yeah. Yes, it is awkward. There is even one shot of him coming out of the ocean naked that seemed a little bit like the Loch Ness Monster. Yeah, Richard is not a monster, but that's just a humorous look at it. But it's not very endearing. It's not a very endearing look for Richard to be naked around his tribe mates for absolutely no reason.
It's kind of childish and immature to me, and kind of grandstanding and walking around on national TV.
Later on in episode 6, Richard delivers some sage wisdom in a confessional that is worthy of both a character moment and a strategic move. This is the template that any good Survivor winner needs to follow. It truly does not matter how much power you have. The only power you need is picking who gets to go home every night. And that's it.
I'm in control of who's being voted off. And I think that's all that matters to me.
Episode 7 rolls up on us all of a sudden, and here we are, the merge. Or as the people on the show keep calling it, the merger. I don't know why. But anyways, the merger is coming, and so is the calm before the storm. Richard is given a ton of compliments by his fellow tribe mates when they're talking to the other tribe, such as,
We got the gay guy, gay compassionate guy.
or how he is a sweetheart and easygoing. All in all, Rich is set up as a good guy and someone who cares about people, but he is naked. A lot.
And Rich is a sweetheart. So easygoing. He's naked a lot. Okay.
In the same episode, Rich talks about the morality of voting others out. In his mind, there isn't anything immoral about this. It's a game and he's playing within the rules of it, and they have to vote people out, like they don't have a choice. This is something that doesn't seem to really have been discussed yet so far between either tribe, but it does seem to sadden everyone when it happens, and that includes Jeff, when people are sent home packing.
This has absolutely nothing to do with this. It sounds like sheer stupidity to me when somebody says, oh no, I'm not going to build an alliance, and I hope they wouldn't do that either.
Greg, the resident goofball who's actually came from the other tribe, assesses in a matter of days that Rich is a massive threat. I mean, this would potentially be fatal for Rich if Greg seemed to even care a little bit about the game and how it's played. While it is bad, Greg follows this up by saying that Rich is hugely entertaining and seems to like him a lot.
Rich is playing a big game, which is very fun, so he's awfully entertaining.
The first person is voted out of the merged tribe, Ratana, and it's Gretchen. Now, throughout the episode, we didn't really get any reasons for Gretchen. It didn't seem like she did anything to annoy anybody. There's nothing really like out there just said, vote out Gretchen. What is very important here though, is while Rich, Sue, Rudy, and Kelly have been voting with each other for a while now, it's here that we actually see them solidified as a 4, the Toggy 4. It's here though that Toggy 4 shows the true strength of an alliance over a bunch of individuals making their own independent decisions, as Gretchen is eliminated in a 4-to-1-to-1-to-1-to-1-to-1 vote. Now in episode 8, it's shown that Rich is still the sole provider of food for the tribe. He was doing this before the merge, he's doing it after the merge. This makes him an invaluable asset to a tribe full of people who seem to be voting based on how they feel about someone versus what is actually their best chances for them to win the whole game. Later on, Rich has a conversation where he gives his insight on religion. And here's where I want to pause the story for 2 reasons. Number 1 is we need to look at this through the lens of audiences in 2000, which is what we're doing so far, but it really needs to be stated here because Richard saying he is against religion is something that audiences in 2000 would have not had as much leeway towards. It would have been definitely viewed as negative overall to a wider audience. Obviously, this is based on your own worldview as to whether you think he is right or not, but we will chalk this one up as a villainous moment based on the audience at the time and what the story, the show is seeming to be telling us.
Fear comes from, it's useless. I think religion is what destroys our society.
Number 2 is how we have reached a turning point in Richard's story arc. Up until now, he's been seen as a likable guy who fishes and is sometimes naked, which is weird, but it's just how Rich is and you accept it. Now, no one has seemed to have any real issues with him aside from maybe Dirk. I don't think the religion bit has anything to do with the turn of his story from hero to villain, but the timing is very unique, and it's a clear mark of Rich as a character basically being viewed as an immoral villain who controls the game unfairly. Just mark this as the moment as a huge shift happens. All right, let's continue. Moving on with episode 8, we see a little story unfolding as Greg thinks he is playing Rich like a fiddle. Funny, Greg, funny. Jenna agrees that Greg has Rich in the palm of his hand, but not today. Rich is fully aware of this and is just playing along. Hence why Greg actually goes home at the end of this episode.
I would like to spend more time with him and get to know him, but I would also rather have the $1 million than to have somebody like him around to worry about.
Now this is more of an editing moment than anything else, but Jervis and Rich are playing cards. What game are they playing? It's really hard to tell, and I don't think it really matters here. But what's more important to notice is that Rich plays a king card and then laughs as if he just won the game with that king card.
I got a king.
Now we have reached the crucial turn of the story where Rich emerges as the villain, and with that, you need a hero, a protagonist who goes against everything the villain stands for, gives the audience someone to root for. Insert Kelly Wigglesworth. Who is Kelly Wigglesworth? Well, she's been a part of the Toggy 4 so far. She's part of their alliance, but she's been really understated. She hasn't really stood out at all. She hasn't done anything necessarily to note. While a part of the alliance, though, she introduces the opposing view to Rich's earlier statements about the morality of having an alliance in Survivor.
I feel every tribal council, only it gets worse every time. I feel like a backstabber. I feel like a liar. You know, people came here to make, you know, bosom buddies and, you know, lifelong friends. They should have gone to summer camp.
We move to our second tribal council of the merge, and Jeff is asking how you play morally while also getting the votes at the end to win it all. Rich plays dumb and says all he's doing is catching fish and making people happy, and he's just hoping that's enough. He's kind of playing happy-go-lucky in a way. He claims that he doesn't really even know who he's voting for. Greg goes home and episode 9 is here, and things are escalating quickly. Right away, Rich tells us that lying to Jeff is absolutely necessary to preserve his game. He lambasts the host for even asking that sort of direct question that he did at Tribal. Cut to Kelly saying that the alliance is stupid because all they're doing is lining up everyone like lambs to the slaughter. She really doesn't find this to be fun at all, and she thinks it takes just everything out of the game. She doesn't clarify what would be fun or what they should do instead. She doesn't provide a solution to the problem, but it's clear that she disapproves of what her alliance is doing. Immediately moving over to Colleen, a member of the opposing tribe that has merged with them, she states that Jeff had asked whether a deserving person was going to win this game, and Colleen says,
The answer to that question is no.
You think I'm gonna come out and say, oh yeah, we got 4 of us voting up against all you guys, and we're gonna knock you all down to the end. Come on.
Dr. Sean's assessment of why Richard is in power is interesting because he thinks it's exactly as it's being perceived on the surface. Richard's catching a lot of fish and everyone knows it. Richard knows that this is only a facade and is not at all the reason why he holds all the power.
Last Island Tribal Council, when I was talking about I'll be staying around here because I'm providing fish, was an outright blatant lie. I'm staying around here because I'm bright.
Later on, Sue Hawk decides she wants to go catch a fish to prove that not only Richard can do it. She's tired of hearing about how he can only do it, so she's gonna go catch one and then rub it in his face. Apparently him saying how he is the provider all the time is becoming a bit grating to all the other players. Again, we see Colleen pile on about how Rich is arrogant and thinks he is above everyone else and is full of baloney, as she says. This is a huge shift from 2 episodes when he was considered lovable and compassionate by pretty much everyone who knew him.
Thinks he's so above everybody, and it's full of baloney.
But despite all this dogpiling, it's Richard's birthday. Happy birthday to him. Happy birthday to him. For most people, this is a positive day where everyone is nice to you. Well, Rich decides the only way to celebrate his birthday is, you may have guessed it, in his birthday suit. And this makes everyone, how do I say it? Let's just say they're liking him less and less with each passing moment. This has gone from being humorous earlier in the season to annoying the crap out of everyone. At the end of episode 9, Dr. Sean utilizes his alphabet strategy to vote for Jenna. Long story short on that strategy is that Dr. Sean has been voting for people in alphabetical order, but he has been very open about doing this, which means Richard Alliance can take advantage of this by also voting for Jenna. Rich confesses they knew she was next up for Dr. Sean, so his alliance voted with Sean to get that easy vote out. As a slight aside, I am doing a follow-up video on that alphabet strategy, but I'm not going to dive too much into that here. Just know that we will look at it in depth in another video. However, our hero actually decided she was not going to vote with the alliance. That's right, Kelly Wigglesworth is not going to vote for Jenna. Instead, she votes for Sean. Why? She doesn't say. Richard doesn't get on to her about this at any point in time. Rich then reveals how he views his very successful strategy. He starts by laughing at how late people are catching on to the power of an alliance and comes across as smug in the process. Richard explains that this process is slow and methodical. The idea of limiting everyone is a marathon, it's not a sprint. This is immediately followed up by Jervis calling Rich arrogant and cocky.
Rich is very arrogant, very cocky, and very, very overconfident.
So a running story in episode 10 is that Jervis is not married and has had 2 kids out of wedlock. Now, some people might just skip over this nowadays, like, is more commonplace, or maybe it's more talked about, but this was a big deal to the audiences and the tribe mates back in 2000. Rudy says that this is a bad thing to do, while Rich shows his compassionate side. The hits just keep coming and coming. Sue then lays it on Rich by calling him a snake, but then credits him as the reason the alliance actually happened and wasn't just words floating in the air. Later on, Kelly then tells us how being part of an alliance is evil and that Rich is like the devil.
Making a deal with Rich is kind of like making a deal with the devil.
She literally feels as if participating in an alliance with him is basically joining the dark side.
You know, I kind of feel like Luke Skywalker or something. I crossed over to the dark side for a moment.
Remember this for later. Jervis says Rich is really arrogant after winning the immunity challenge.
Watch the arrogance and the swagger he's walking around with. Because he won that immunity. He knows he can't be touched tonight.
Richard reveals to us that he knows that Kelly is up to something. He doesn't say what he thinks she is doing, but he knows that she has a plan in place that is not going with what the alliance is doing. Once again at Tribal Council, Jeff asks about any alliance going on, and Rich is cool as a cucumber and slippery as a snake. He plays completely dumb, and once again, Jeff lets him get away with it.
Richard, according to Colleen and Sue, there is an alliance.
Is it?
Rich, Sue, and Rudy all vote to remove Jervis, but so does Kelly. She also votes with the alliance. Despite what she said earlier in the episode, she votes with them. Weird. Episode 11 arrives, and Rich and Sue, they're pretty sure they figured out what Kelly Wigglesworth is up to and what her strategy is. You see, it seems to them that she is flip-flopping to appease her alliance, them plus Rudy, but also voting not with them to appease Bagong, which is the opposing tribe. That way, when it gets to the end of the show and she's in the final two, she will get more votes from the jury because she's appeased everyone. This is excellent recognition on Rich and Sue's part, but better for Rich because he doesn't let his emotions control his actions learning this information, or what he assumes is accurate information. This is immediately followed up by Kelly saying she is here to play the game, so who cares what people think about her? It seems as if she has turned a corner and is all in on the alliance.
I don't give a rat's ass what people think about me. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. I know who I am, so who cares?
Now we get another editing moment when Colleen is talking to Rich and says how she has to keep reminding herself that she is on a game show. This brings a cheery laughter from Rich, and this could be construed as Colleen giving into the dark side that Kelly was shown Rich to be leading so far. But the moment comes across more as an editing wink than anything else. At the immunity challenge later on in the episode, Richard is talking to Rudy about how dumb it is that Colleen is even trying to win immunity since she is safe and Kelly's a goner. Now, not really commenting on that as much as it is that he's finally confirmed that he's targeting Kelly, and that's a smart move on his part. But how soon Richard underestimates the power of immunity since Kelly wins it and is safe, and if Colleen had won it, then Kelly would have been open to go home, and therefore Colleen trying to win the challenge was smart and therefore make Rich look really dumb for getting on to her about that. Okay, so back to that challenge. Sure, Kelly wins it, but something else happens during it. It's still going on, and since we haven't touched on how challenges really work at all in the game of Survivor, it's important to know that Jeff Probst, the host, is not narrating any of these. Reward, immunity, doesn't matter. It's up to the players and the text on screen to tell us what exactly is happening. With that in mind, having Rich narrate the challenge is actually a welcome bit of humor to lighten the mood.
And the play-by-play, as we look at Sue, she's got the arms up level across the side, but Kelly, holy Moses, she looks like she's going back and forth.
Prior to Tribal Council, we see Kelly once again flip-flopping on her position. It just never ends. She is saying how it doesn't matter if she is an alliance or not. We get Colleen and Dr. Sean's take on this, as they both say how she was being a double agent by sucking up to the Bagong members and then giving that info to her own alliance. This gets even more confusing since she said she is voting strategically, but it's not an alliance. She continues to say how it feels so good to not care anymore, and Sue says how Kelly put a knife in her back. Since Kelly has immunity, this won't bear any fruit at this Tribal Council, but she does vote for Sean, while the alliance votes for Colleen, and Colleen is the one who ultimately goes home.
I don't care what I say to people. I don't care if I'm nice to anybody at camp anymore. I do not give a
Here we are in the next to last episode. All the Bagong members have been eliminated, and we can breathe easy as all the haters, minus Kelly, are gone. Rich says Rotana, the name of their merged tribe, is stupid and meaningless, and he never cared about it.
It's a group of 16 people, 4 of whom were in alliance with me, and a bunch of other ones.
So Kelly didn't vote with Rich at the last tribal, and Kelly reminds us that Rich is smart and tricky, and she doesn't trust him.
Things really tricky, and I don't trust him one bit. I never really have.
But luckily for Rich, she says this at a point in the game where he has the numbers and there's nothing she can do about it. Rich tells us right after Kelly says he is tricky that the point of the game is to win. That's all that matters.
Whatever it takes to win here is the point. It's a game, and call it Machiavellian, sure.
Kelly and Sue end up having a huge fight about her stabbing Sue in the back. Metaphorically, there was no real knife stabbing, no worries here. Rich doesn't get involved and is actually a good listener when Kelly comes to him to confide in her problems with Sue. He recognizes that her actions speak louder than her words, and he takes what she is saying with a grain of salt.
So certainly that little tiff between Kelly and Sue has been coming and plays to my advantage, absolutely.
Then she made all the rest of us look like the bad guys and her the one good guy out of the whole 5 of us.
Later on, Rich says it is exhausting to have to keep track of what everyone is doing and what they are feeling. However, this is the sign of a smart player. But in that same breath, he says he doesn't care about anyone left on the island. Kelly ends up winning immunity again, taking the target off her back for now, and forces Rich to have to vote someone out from his original tribe. Rich recognizes how this takes a little power away from him, but not enough. He's still running the show, and therefore the Toggy 4 eliminate Dr. Sean.
Sean, you need to bring me your torch.
It's time for the finale, and it is a slow burn. Not much really happens at the beach as the final 4 are aware of how things are going to play out. At least they think they're aware. It's important to note that Rich never once in this season or in the finale gets emotionally upset and causes trouble because anyone flipped on him or did something he didn't want them to do or say. In fact, he remains level-headed the entire season. So Sue lets us in on a little secret. Rich has already convinced everyone there that's left in the game to take him to the finale. Whether it's loyalty or because they think they can beat him, Richard is guaranteed a final 2 spot. Sue gets voted at 4th and views Kelly as the reason why, because Kelly wins immunity. At the final immunity challenge, it is Rich, Rudy, and Kelly, and this is a doozy. They are tasked with keeping their hand on a large idol, and whoever's the last one standing wins. Doesn't sound hard. But after 2 hours, Richard makes a bold move and lets go. While Jeff in the audience is flabbergasted, Rich explains his reasoning. Basically what he says is that he has a final 2 deal with Rudy, who's very loyal. So if he wins, then Rich is definitely going to the end. If Kelly wins, she won't take Rudy because everyone loves him, and therefore will take Rich at default. With Rich not winning, he goes to the end either way, and is also not burdened with having to vote someone out, which doesn't make him an enemy, which if he had done to Rudy, would have been backstabbing Rudy hard. Kelly wins immunity once again and votes out Rudy. That leaves us with the final 2, Rich the Snake versus Kelly the Flip-Flopper at the final Tribal Council.
So let's begin the final Tribal Council.
For their opening speeches, Kelly asks that they are not judged by their games, but by the people that they are, who they are on the inside. Rich takes the opposite approach. He says, please judge us on the game. Please judge us only on how we played the game, because his entire game was strategy, and the goal was to survive 14 ejections, not all of which went to plan and therefore required him to make decisions on the go, but he framed Survivor as a game, whereas Kelly frames it as a moral decision based on the evaluation as who is the better person outside of the game. Rich definitely comes out on top here. The first juror to ask a question is Jervis, and Rich gives a non-answer that really doesn't do him any favors. Kelly tries to backtrack on joining the alliance, claiming that it was a mistake. Despite bad answers on both of their ends, Jervis votes for Kelly. He claims that this is because of Sue ripping her a new one, which we'll get to that, but Rich could have helped himself here, I think, with a good answer and saved this vote from flipping. The next juror is Jenna. She asked them if they were to have 2 others sitting at Final Tribal instead of themselves, who would it be? They could pick anyone that would play the game. Rich picks Rudy and Greg. At face value, this seems like a bad idea. Why not say Jenna since she's asking the question? Throughout the season, it was well established that Jenna and Kelly were good friends, and Rich had to know this as he went into Final Tribal, that he probably wasn't going to get her vote. So he picks his number 1 ally, Rudy, who would feel betrayed if Rich ever flipped on him, and Greg, who seems like his vote could go either way at this point. He doesn't seem to have any real loyalty. This overall is smart as both of these men vote for Rich and Jenna votes for Kelly. Dr. Sean is the third juror juror, and he basically says Richard is getting his vote due to their friendship. I'm serious. There's nothing really else. That's the entire breakdown. Colleen is the fourth juror, and here we get our first big blunder on Rich's part. Colleen claims she was voting for him prior to final tribal, but apparently Kelly's answer was better than his. Rich answered Colleen's question about what got him to the end, and she laughed at him and didn't agree at all. See, Rich had said he was observant. He was observant of his tribe mates, despite losing the challenge previously where they answered questions about their tribe mates, and said he wasn't there to make friends. While voting, Colleen claims that Rich doesn't need the money, and therefore votes for Kelly. Rudy is the fifth juror, and he has a humorous moment as he says this.
I don't have nothing to say to these two. I just like to let everybody here know how dumb I feel after the mistake I made yesterday.
Rich was guaranteed this vote since Rudy was his #1 ally, and Rich never flipped on him, and they were both friends. Greg is the sixth juror, and this one is really a coin flip, truly. His question is completely irrelevant in his decision, it seems like, despite the face value. He just goes up there and asks them, pick a number 1 through 10, and that's it. It's clear that the relationship he had with Rich, as shown previously, was the deciding factor, along with the respect Rich gave him in his answer to Jenna. Sue Hawk is the final juror, and her infamous Snakes and Rats speech is a marvel. If you haven't seen it from beginning to end, I recommend looking it up and watching it. I can't put the whole thing here. But essentially, she lays out that the island they lived on was full of rats, and Kelly is one of them. Rich is a snake, and snakes eat rats. Sue felt betrayed by Kelly, who flip-flopped a lot and made her feel as if the friendship they developed was all for nothing. Also, the tidbit about Kelly being on the side of the road with no water and then Sue leaving her for dead may have just said everything that needed to be said from Sue.
And you were laying there, dying of thirst. I would not give you a drink of water. I would let the vultures take you and do whatever they want with you.
This works out for Rich though, as he was not blamed. He completely avoided blame for voting out Sue. I think Sue understood that when Kelly won immunity, he wasn't going to vote for Rudy, so I think he kind of, he dodged a big one there. The final speech at Tribal is more of just the same from Rich, who really can't do anything else more to sway their votes. He asks that they respect the decisions he made in the game, as they were necessary for him to win. Richard Hatch wins Survivor Borneo on a 4-3 vote. Despite his claim that strategy was more important, it was a mixture of that and friendship. It's clear that the votes he received from Sue, Rudy, and Sean were all rooted in them being friends on the island. The strategy he played got him to the end, but the bonds he forged got him the win. This will be an important factor to consider for all future winners. So let's break this down. How is Rich as a character? In the pre-merge, it seemed like Rich had his moments of heroism. He was a provider, and he didn't really rub anyone the wrong way, aside from Dirk, over their different thoughts on religion. Even when he was naked, it was like, ha, Rich. Naked. What a funny guy. His moments of villainy mostly stem from the editing and individual character moments he had with himself, such as his interactions with the snake. Now in the post-merge, he had Bagong and Kelly clearly paint him as a villain after the first couple of votes. He never showed negative emotions towards anyone though. He seemed to be uncaring about who he sent home, and he didn't change from pre-merge to post-merge. It's just the perception of others changed. As I said, like pre-merge, he was naked and it was all fun and games. Post-merge, it was like, Rich, you're literally ruining this entire day. And that came across much different. He was the same arrogant, likable guy in the beginning as he was at the end. Out of 39 character moments shown on the show, 15 were heroic and 24 were villainous, making Richard Hatch a villain in Survivor Borneo. Now, how was Rich as a strategist? In the pre-merge, it seemed as if Rich was ahead of his time in terms of strategy. He wanted to start Alliance sooner than others did. He was talking about it much earlier, but he smartly waited patiently until some people realized that this is what they needed to do to survive the game. Once he locked in his Toggy 4, he was set till the end. He never flipped on anyone or lied to anyone. He was clear in his intentions, and it worked for the season he was in. It was the right mix of strategy and honesty. He was painted as a big target, but he was able to socially maneuver himself to never be voted out because he had people believing that they could beat him at the end. In the post-merge, the strategy really annoyed a lot of the contestants who were not in the Toggy 4, along with Kelly, who was the Toggy 4. But by the time anyone could could think to actually mount an opposing force that was doing a similar thing, it was too late and Rich had the numbers and loyalty to the end. Out of 37 strategic moments shown on the show, 31 were smart and 6 were dumb, making Richard Hatch a smart strategist on Survivor Borneo. Tune in next time as I take a look at the infamous alphabet strategy of Dr. Sean. Thanks for watching, and if you like the content you see here, then please support me and this channel on Patreon. That Patreon has exclusive Survivor podcasts by myself and guests. So join today to listen to those, and of course to support the channel so we can make more great content.
The tribe has spoken.
We'll see you guys later.
It's time for you to go.